Dollar Tree has all sorts of wood and faux wood wall signs and picture frames. My home office was in need of a little update, so I decided to use some of these items to decorate my walls. So first up, Dollar Tree has these little hanging wooden shelves. They're just plain wood. And then they also sell this wallpaper. So I grabbed some in this wooden chevron pattern. And it is like peel and stick wallpaper, but I don't totally trust the adhesive on it. So I just applied a little bit of a glue stick to like the surface of one of the little wooden shelves. And then I cut a sheet of that wood pattern wallpaper in half. You use half a sheet per side, and then you peel off the backing and then center and smooth down that wallpaper. I just smoothed it down with my fingers. You could also use like a smoothing tool if you have like a Cricut tool to get all those air bubbles out. Make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I just used my cutting mat and my pen blade and I trimmed off any excess wallpaper. And so trim right up against the edge of that little wooden shelf. And then from there, it's time to remake the little holes in the wooden shelf so that you can still hang it up. So just take like a fine point pen blade and poke it through the existing holes and then kind of like stick it in and twist it. If you come at it from like the wallpaper side, then you can take like the end of a paintbrush or something and stick it in so that the wallpaper goes in through that hole. So there we go. And then repeat the same process on the other side with glue sticks. And then on the smaller shelf, I did like a fourth of a piece of wallpaper on each side. So the small shelves come in a pack of 2, but I only used one of them. So I'll just kind of speed this up and show you the sped up process here. And then when I strung these up, I found it easiest to wrap the ends of the string with a little bit of masking tape, or you could use like Scotch tape or whatever. It just makes it easier so it's not like fraying as you try to run it through the little hole in the shelf. And then from there, you can take the tape off and then tie a knot at like whatever length you want to hang your shelf at. And then Dollar Tree with their wall decor has these little letter boards. So I bought one and I just put the little phrase, "And I choose joy," which is from one of my favorite songs by For King and Country. And here's my little shelves in my office. I just displayed the little letter board and a couple of mini faux succulents. I really like the added wood texture from the wallpaper instead of just like a plain wooden shelf. And then if you've been to Dollar Tree lately, you've probably seen some of these like unfinished like shiplap wood plank signs. So I just decided to do a little stencil. And so I just used stencil vinyl and I cut this little like floral shape. I think I just searched in Cricut Design Space for like floral stencil or something. And then you just weed it and then use your transfer tape to transfer the stencil vinyl onto the sign. And then I wanted to like create like more of a texture finish. So instead of just using paint, I mixed part wall spackle and part white acrylic craft paint. I think I probably used too much paint. I probably should have used more spackle, less paint, because it didn't create quite as much texture as I wanted, but I was still happy with the end result. So just gave that a quick mix and then use my pouncer brush and pounce all over the stencil and make sure you get like up against all the edges there. And then whenever I use like painter's tape or stencils, I like to remove the adhesive while the paint is still wet or at least kind of tacky, like before it's fully dried. I feel like that's the way to get crisper lines. And so I just went and started like weeding and removing all the pieces of the stencil. Because my paint was so thick, it kind of made it hard to see where the edges of the vinyl were that needed to be peeled off. So what I ended up doing is pulling my laptop back out and looking at my design in Cricut Design Space to kind of help guide me to see where I needed to keep weeding. But here's a cute little finished sign that I also hung up in my office. And then my final project, I used these little wooden arch picture frames. They hold like a 4x6 photo. I just popped the backing off because these were going to hang on my wall instead of standing on a shelf. Some of that hardware kind of gave me a hard time, so I used my little pen blade to pry off that little metal bracket on the back. I just wanted a nice flat surface so that I could stick these right on my wall. And then this step is optional, so I just loosened the screw on that little clip ever so slightly, just so that I could slip some masking tape underneath, because I decided I didn't want these clips to be silver, I wanted them to be gold. And so I just, loosened it just enough that I could slide some masking tape under. I didn't want to completely remove it and then deal with having to like reattach it. And then I just took some Rub and Buff and my sacrificial paintbrush that's been sacrificed to Rub and Buff because like you're never going to get like it fully clean after. And so I just used a tiny little paintbrush and I applied a little bit of bronze antique gold Rub and Buff to the clip. And then I let it dry. And then I just used a scrap of drop cloth fabric. So any type of like linen canvas type fabric you have, drop cloth. I swear I bought like one drop cloth 8 years ago and I've been using it ever since for little projects here and there. But I just kind of cut roughly about a 4x6 inch rectangle. And then I really wanted super frayed edges. So luckily this piece had been washed and had some frayed edges to get me started. And then I just kind of started pulling threads and fraying the other two edges until I got, the look that I like. So I kind of trimmed and pulled and trimmed and pulled until it kind of got the look that I wanted. So you don't want the frayed edges to look super straight or like they've been, freshly frayed. So I found it easiest to just kind of like pull threads and then maybe take your scissors and cut at an angle. So instead of like cutting at a straight line, like, when you're getting a haircut, right? And like the hairstylist cuts vertically instead of horizontally. That was kind of what I did when I finished that up here. And then once I had 3 little frayed 4x6 pieces of drop cloth fabric, I quickly ironed them just to take out any wrinkles. So I gave them a quick spray of water and then ironed. So I wanted my little pieces of canvas fabric to be a little like stiffer. So before I added my paint, I did a layer of Mod Podge. So just like I used matte Mod Podge, use whatever you got, but just like a nice generous coat. But I didn't go all the way to the edges because part of the canvas drop cloth is going to show. So I left probably like a 1/2 inch border where the canvas like wasn't covered in Mod Podge. And then set that aside to dry. And once the Mod Podge is completely dried, I kind of painted over the dried Mod Podge with Waverly chalk paint in the color Moss, which is like my favorite green. And really kind of keep this like rough. You want the brush strokes to show. It's not supposed to be a perfect rectangle. It's going to be kind of messy, uneven, imperfect. And you don't want them to be like all identical. Each one can be a little bit unique. So vary your brush stroke lengths. And then once it dried, it kind of warped, so kind of bend it back so it's nice and flat. And then I just like Google image search for like modern abstract floral doodles or something. And I just sketched out on a piece of paper a couple ideas. And once I picked like my final winning designs, I just took a pencil and I drew that floral design on top of the green paint. And then that was my template. So then I just took some plain white acrylic craft paint. This is Decor white paint and a very fine point paintbrush and just paint right over those pencil lines. You may want to do more than one coat or try to use like a thicker line of paint just so you get full coverage. But that was it. Once that white paint had dried, I was able to put each little piece of drop cloth fabric back onto the picture frame. And then I hung these up on the wall in my office as well. So here's my finished little corner in my freshly painted home office. I'm really happy with how everything looked out, and I really like how I have these little like wood decor pieces on my dark green painted wall. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Until next time, happy making!